Well, hello, panelists, and hello, everyone who's joining us on this Zoom webinar to explain a little bit of some of the recent communication on our plans to reopen the school this coming fall. My name is Ned Sherrill. I am the head of the school, and I am joined by Chris Seeley, Assistant Head of School and Director of Academics, Chet Blair, Director of Student Life, Krista Peterson, Registrar, and we're being ably assisted tonight by Angie Pacheski, who's going to help us on the Q&A end of things. We encourage you to submit questions as they come to you. You may have some already, having looked at the communication and the calendar and maybe some of the frequently asked questions section, which we hope are all informative, but all of this is new for you. And while it may be a little familiar with us, it's still kind of new to us too, as the entire world is adjusting to the pandemic and trying to make appropriate choices at this present time, particularly for boarding schools where families need to plan ahead and understand basically what to expect. This has been really our effort over the last 6 weeks before school ended. And as we've indicated in some other communication from the school to you, we wanted to have this decision reached by this time of the year, certainly in terms of, the basic goals of opening the school. And there are certainly plenty of details yet to flesh out. But we have more of that to talk about as we go ahead. We hope that you find this session informative. I believe it's being recorded so that we could also post it where other families unable to join us live could also sort of see the presentation and hear some of the interaction that we'll engage in a little while. We plan to go for about an hour, maybe a little over that. We know people are busy. Family lives are certainly busy at this time of the evening on the East Coast. And all of that is sort of paramount to again, we hope effective communication, a good dialogue, things that we are not able to answer or you're not able to ask this evening, we will certainly get to by email. And we encourage you to write directly to me, to Chris, or to Chet with some of those questions if you feel they were not answered well, or if you're looking for a little bit more clarity. Our goal is to work together. We value greatly our partnership with every family. Your sons, your students, and I'm sure there are a few students on the line who I hope will hear this well from me as well, are your greatest treasure. Of all the things that we do in this life, raising our children, preparing them for life is our greatest joy. And at a school like Church Farm School, we certainly understand that. And to be your partner in this particular phase of their lives and formative years of high school, preparing for college, we take that responsibility seriously. And we recognize also that as a boarding school, our best effort is being here on campus together. So in both of those respects, wanting to be a school where our engagement with students is live and in person, where the relationships that we build and can continue to build are strong by our ability to communicate directly, face-to-face on a 24/7 operation, not just inside the classroom, but outside the classroom. We tend to regard all of our program not as co-curricular or extra, but as fundamental to raising children, right? In our case, boys into young men, preparing them to move on to college and into life with a sound grounding in a community like ours. We're not perfect. We don't always get everything right. We recognize that. But we try to lay out the best of plans that make sense to you, that certainly makes sense to our staff and their ability to basically lay out and execute a well thought out program academically, athletically, in residential life through community service, and in some other activities that we engage in as we go along. We value that partnership with you. We thank you for your trust and confidence in us. as we said last year, encouraging the boys to pursue excellence, not perfection, but to be their very best and to always lay out a little bit of higher bar that they can reach for the stars and move ahead accordingly. And that's really sort of been true also for our planning purposes and even in finishing the year. So I welcome new families who are new to the school, who are joining us tonight, planning on coming to the school where their sons would be ninth graders in the coming school year, and also to returning families. Thanking each one of you, because I'm assuming that the new students as well engaged in some kind of online learning at the end of the academic year last year that we finished up in May and June, and that as we prepare for the future, we are already well acquainted with change, with adjustments, with our need to be flexible and open to what may come next. All of us are following the guidelines and instructions that come from health experts. First and foremost, we want to have a healthy, safe, and secure campus. We can't operate if people are feeling insecure, unsettled, ambivalent about their campus, about their home, about how they live and where they're living. If we can do that securely, then we can get on with the program at hand. And so trying to balance all the best of what the experts are saying, knowing that we can't put a bubble over the campus and keep it hermetically sealed from all danger. Recognizing that, we've also tried to put forward a plan that is one of engagement, one where students interact with one another, one where students interact with faculty and staff. And in the case of athletics, we are hopeful that we're able to engage, at least at a varsity level at first, with some interscholastic athletic program. Certainly for varsity athletes, they've been preparing not just academically, but also in athletics. And this is not a small factor in a young man's education. The values of teamwork, the values of working together, of spirited competition, of physical fitness, all the things that go into that. It's not always all about winning, but that's a goal to have. But our purpose is to come together as a team, and that's fundamental to an exercise in education and part of our core values of brotherhood, respect, responsibility, and integrity. So that's the one area in some of our announcements where we know that we will risk some greater exposure, potentially, and students intermingling with other athletes from other schools. And we've tried to do our best to mitigate most of that risk. Depending on how things go between now and the start of school, as students prepare, we know that college campuses are seeing a spike in the COVID-19 virus being infected, and some of that teamwork as students return to campus, share in athletic competition, that concerns us. So as that continues to play out, we'll understand a little bit more as we get closer to the start of school, just what kind of interscholastic competition we'll be able to engage in. I'm going to move a little further into the calendar itself. I'm not sure if I'm able to share my screen. Let me see if I can. I think I can. Let's see. Angie, can you allow me to share my screen if I go through the calendar as the host? If not, I'll just carry on thinking that people may have it in front of them. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just carry on as if you might have this calendar in front of you. So our plan on this all-year calendar is to onboard our campus. Oftentimes we talk about our journey as a ship on a year's journey with a couple of ports of call. Those would be vacations, and our major vacations at Church Farm School historically have been Thanksgiving, Christmas, and spring break, a little bit ahead of Easter time. This year is going to be different. We are.
Ed, I'm sorry, we can't see what you're sharing. Can you try it again, please?
I don't have that permission, Angie.
I made you the host. Try again,
Okay.
please.
Thank you. Okay, hopefully that's up on everybody's screen if you're able to see that. I'm just going to run through an overview again of what you've read, but to explain a little bit of our rationale for some of the decisions that go into these particular decisions. I want to say that by doing this, this allows greater planning to take place as we now have a pretty solid orientation to the year's format. We do expect international students. We don't have that many this year, but we do expect them to arrive back in the United States by August 21st so that they can participate in 2 weeks of quarantine or isolation with a host family before coming to campus. That's a national standard, a national request, and we are certainly asking our international families to accommodate that. And we believe that certainly that they will. Faculty and staff will come on board shortly, right around August 24th, preparing for the school year and dialogue with curricular interest, other programmatic interest, and getting set. We are asking seniors to the 12th grade, the class of 2021, to arrive by noon on August 28th. This is a little earlier than what we've done, at least in terms of ahead of Labor Day. We want to work with the seniors as a group to prepare them for their leadership, which is going to be even more greatly needed this year to help administer a number of programs in the cottages and around the classrooms as we continue to maintain a standard of hygiene and cleanliness that all of us are going to have to participate in at some level. That will be a daily exercise. Other things we'll be asking the seniors to help us with programmatically is also important to us, and this will give us some time to do that. Prefects will join to help with that shortly after. And then we expect our new students, the 9th grade, to arrive on August 30th between 9 and 11 in the morning. And for those families who are on the line hearing this, we will send a few more details about how we will onboard. As each student, returning or new student, comes back to campus, we will ask that everybody has a mask. We would like families to be limited in number, preferably a parent. A new student may want a couple of parents to come. We understand that. We'll have more of an orientation program for you when you do come. But to set up a room and be in a cottage, we would like just one parent and a student to be together to get that room set up. Again, wearing masks, doing things like that. You may need to take a trip, a last minute trip to a Target or a Walmart or a grocery store, something like that. But we really want that to be minimal as well, to be prepared to come to school with what you may need, clothing, bedding, other supplies that a student may need and want to have in his room. We ask that a lot of that, certainly around clothing and things that would go back and forth from home, to be minimal. We don't know if the government would ask us or require us to shut down, or if in our own case, if we had our own internal spike of COVID, if we had to do that on our own. So being prepared to move a little bit more lightly, not bring quite as much material as students may typically do in today's world is preferable. Not mandated, but preferable. So thinking about what are the things that I need, what are the things I can get by with, all of that. We do ask students to come with a supply of cloth masks that would cover the nose and mouth. We're suggesting that number being between 7 and 10. The school will have a supply of cloth masks also to be utilized in case a student runs out, can't do the laundry, whatever that may be. But 7 to 10 allows for a clean mask each day and for an opportunity to do laundry. So we hope that that is something that could be homemade, could be bought, or otherwise supplied. So we thank you for your attentiveness to that. We'll speak a little bit more in detail in the coming weeks about the orientation program, about other things, the senior leadership program, as those get more refined and further developed. Those details will be forthcoming. But at least in terms of onboarding and putting together a room in a cottage, we do hope that a student and a parent together can do that. Again, for new parents, a second parent or another family member may come on this journey to deliver your child to the school. There will be an orientation program keeping us at an appropriate social distance, but a way for you to see the school and particularly some of the new things that are being constructed as we speak. So that gets us going. Returning students will come back by September 6th, a Sunday, the day before Labor Day. We ask that everybody arrive to campus before noon so that we will have from that day, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, for a fuller orientation of the entire school, mostly by cottage and grade level, keeping the boys somewhat separated, not exclusively, but again, trying to, where possible at the outset, mitigate as much of that risk as we can, but also to get them involved with being here. So this is part of why we're also asking that every family, returning or new, try to minimize their contact beyond the family with other big events, especially 2 weeks prior to coming back to school. There's no way we're going to know that without your coming to campus. Everybody will have a wellness check when they do come to campus. That'll be part of our questioning, wanting to know a little bit more about where you've been over the last couple of weeks. If we feel that that's been greater exposure, we may interrogate that a little bit further. It is possible that we might ask you to return home if we felt that you didn't understand what we were asking for. So we want to make that clear. It doesn't mean you have to stay in the home for 2 weeks before you're coming back to school. But again, to be safe, to wear your mask, to hand wash frequently, and to avoid larger gatherings, bigger spaces that might expose you to greater risk of contact with the virus. The other thing about the virus that we know is that particularly with younger people, more may be asymptomatic. They may be carrying the virus unwittingly. So that's also part of that. Any interview, any test isn't going to pick that up. So what we can do for one another as neighbors in a community, that is our request as we get started. We plan to start classes by the Thursday of that week on September 10th. And a lot of that will be orientation to some hybrid classroom activities, some of the class in the classroom, some of the class online learning in spaces around the main building or in the cottage, depending on the size of the class and how we're able to accommodate students. But we do expect to have some level of distancing within each classroom. We are blessed to have sizable classrooms. We also have other rooms that are also sizable. So most of the students probably can be in the main building, separated from one another appropriately, and still attending to class either in the classroom physically or nearby online. We'll talk a little bit more about schedule as we go along. We are holding Parents Weekend this year virtually. We are not asking parents to come back to campus. That is not something that we enjoy having to decide, but we also feel at this point is necessary for our planning, for your planning, for our ability to sort of communicate over this 2-day period. That'll probably entail a number of Zoom meetings, whether by webinar or a direct one-to-one contact with your son's teacher. That's the most dynamic, as well as their advisor. Those are the relationships that matter most, I think, in your contact with the school. And I would say also along with your cottage team. The adults in the cottages are also going to be available for your conversations with them about life in the cottage and how each student is doing. I should also say at this point that we are also asking all students to remain on campus from their arrival to the campus until we break at Thanksgiving. There are some exceptions to this rule, as there are always with rules for emergencies or other dynamics of family life. But we ask families to certainly be in touch with the school well in advance, unless it's just an acute emergency that springs on somebody unexpectedly. But if it's some big event that you really want your son home for, we hope that you'll give us an opportunity to weigh the merits of that as far as our campus is concerned and our review of that. And again, we want to work with you on that. But this is a long stretch of students to be on campus, more or less restricted to campus. There are not going to be a great deal of off-campus activities. There may be some insofar as we can secure our group outing as being confined to our group. So if it's something that perhaps a class, the seniors in particular, may still be able to do a little bit of a white water rafting trip because it's confined to them with a few guides who then we can certainly tell by some interview and things like that, that they are virus free in offering that kind of an activity. Other activities may be similar in nature. And again, we will sort of work that out as we go, but we will look for ways for students to be actively engaged either on campus or if they are able to go off campus, they'll be able to do that. We do plan on bringing activities to campus, a variety of either individuals or film or other things that our students can do with our adults on campus as a way of, again, sort of just keeping ourselves fresh each and every week. So we'll move along on understanding that as we sort of go along, certainly through Thanksgiving time. We will take a break on Election Day. Election Day is actually November 3rd, not November 10th, which says on the calendar. So we will actually have campus activities on that day as we are all interested in the election and how that may go. We think it's a good exercise in civics. We want all of our boys to be prepared to be voters. And we certainly would like our boys who can vote to come to school prepared to submit an absentee ballot well ahead of time so the postmark and it can arrive to where it needs to be on time. We had thought about keeping the school on campus through Thanksgiving and some of our early iterations of our calendar, but now we think it best to break at Thanksgiving. So the students will return home on right around November 20th, November 21st, that particular Saturday. They'll be returning home the Saturday before Thanksgiving. And that is so they can return home for this wonderful family holiday, national holiday around the home. We think that's important. It's been will have been a long stretch for the boys to have been on campus. What that means is that we will not return to school right away after Thanksgiving as we've had. We think that's a lot of exposure to a variety of different places, particularly as students travel. And to turn that around quickly within a week, we think it's best. And also at the start of a flu season, where students may share illnesses a little bit more liberally as we head into the winter months, that this is a good time for them to be home. So we will finish the first semester with online learning. That will diminish our ability to hold as many classes during the week. Prior to Thanksgiving, each class will meet 4 times a week. After Thanksgiving with online learning, they'll be meeting twice a week. But we feel we've had a sufficient amount of time already built by that time. So to finish the first semester with 2 classes per week per class, that the boys will have a good chance to take an exam, do a final assessment, a final paper or project, well with the support of their teachers over this time. Christmas break, that the semester will then end by December 18th, and Christmas break will start after that. So final grades will report. So even though the boys will be home, they are at school, but from a distance. That's how that works in the first semester. And then we will take a break for 6 weeks, getting us a little bit through the flu season, a little bit past some of the being on top of one another in the winter months, a little bit more restricted and confined to space. So our plan is to start by bringing the students back at the very end of January and the beginning of February, so we can then start the second semester. And here again, we are asking the boys to be on campus for the entire semester. We do not plan on having a spring break for this year. Rest assured that as this is a little bit longer stretch than the fall semester, we also have put in place a number of holidays, may be the wrong word, but breaks, timeouts from the pace of school life, where everybody, adult and student alike, can get a little bit of a breather, recover from the pace of a few weeks at a time, and then pick up steam again as we go along. The same restrictions would apply to weekend activities insofar as what we understand today. If things improve, if things get better through the course of the fall and the virus is minimized, again, of course, we all know that that's not the case today. But if that does become the case, we can loosen some of that restrictions, but not until we understand that better. So that's going to take some time as we go along. But we plan to go right through. Easter weekend will be one of those breaks as we go along. And this brings us to the close of the second semester by the fourth quarter on May 14th, a Friday. Typically, we would graduate on a Saturday. May 15th, in particular, this coming year, 2021, is a year, or at least the date, where the PIAA and our own athletic conference scheduled far enough in advance. We know that that's a championship day, particularly for track and field. A large number of our boys participate in that, and we don't want to put them in a position of having to choose between graduating or being in the graduation ceremony and also competing in a championship that they may have earned. So we're going to move commencement and baccalaureate to a Sunday this coming year, see how that works. I think it'll be just fine. It'll allow the boys to do what they are able to do. We encourage them to try their very best to make it to those championships. And so we've adjusted our calendar a little bit that way. The graduates will depart on May 16th. Underclassmen, grades 9 through 11, will finish the year with exams and other things that they need to do to finish up through Thursday of that week. And we'll finish up then. And so that really is the overlook of the annual calendar as we go along. A lot of that was put together in order of safety's sake, doing our best, as we said, to run as much of our program as we can without creating a hermetically sealed bubble on the campus, but also doing our best to minimize exposure while keeping some of that program. Some of that may seem counterintuitive to a few listening in today, but I hope that this balancing act between certainly health first and foremost in our thinking, but also the reasons for bringing the boys back to campus as we go along. I'm going to ask Mr. Seeley just to say a word or two about the daily schedule, and also what we've done is the insertion of Saturday morning classes, and I want him to explain a little bit of that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, which I think then allows Ms. Pacheski to transfer the host to Mr. Seeley, where he can then maybe share his screen and talk a little bit about a mock schedule. So again, families and students can understand that.
Thank you, Mr. Sherrill. Ms. Pacheski, can you allow me to start my video also so I can be on camera? Thanks. So while that's happening,
Apparently I cannot.
You can't?
No.
Oh.
Mr. Sherrill can do that.
So while that's happening, I just want to say hello to everyone. And we were able to see some of you as you returned to campus to gather belongings. And it was great to see students and families. We know that there are some families of new students and new students themselves who are joining this call tonight. And we want to welcome you to the school as well. We understand that there's a lot that's ahead of us, and we also want you to know that everything that we're planning for next year really does begin with health and safety of all the members of our community. And there's a great responsibility in that, in doing the things that we must do to keep the campus safe, to minimize risk as much as we can. Now it's going, good, great. To minimize risk as much as we can, and to ensure that we can operate as continually as possible. This all comes with a good degree of change. And we all recognize that while change is difficult, we all have the ability to adjust. And we also want to recognize that we do have not just an obligation, but a desire to support everyone through all of this. And so we are anticipating that things are going to be different next year. I know that you have a sense of that already, and we want to be able to sort of speak through those things, and we'll certainly use the balance of the summer to prepare for the start of school next year. And in every way, as Mr. Sherrill has said, both in writing and this evening, our goal is to be on campus together as much as we possibly can. There may be times, and there will be times, when we'll be learning at a distance. We're trying to minimize those. And we're trying to leverage and maximize the time that we have together as a residential community. So I'm going to share a little bit with you. I'm going to share my screen and explain a little bit about the plans for next year's classes and how we intend to operate on a day-to-day basis. I will say at the outset that this is not a final schedule, and I want to just sort of make that point clear. This is really a representation of the outline of the schedule and some of what you might be able to anticipate as we move forward. But where classes meet in terms of how the blocks fall and some of the other sort of details of the schedule still need to be ironed out as we determine how we can go about our day in the safest possible way. So here we are. I'm going to share this, and I hope that you can see it. I will make it a little larger so that you can see a little bit more clearly what we're intending to do. So as Mr. Sherrill said, part of our change for next year is to have classes on Saturday, classes or other activities. Again, this lists classes, but it may be that there are other activities, school-wide activities that happen on Saturday mornings as well. The school day generally is going to be a little bit longer than it has been in the past, and it will start a little bit later. The class day will start a little bit later than it has in the past. Obviously, we'll need to tend to all sorts of details around health and wellness, checking in, spreading out meal times a little bit in order to maintain safe physical distance through our operations. And so we've had to make some adjustments to the ways in which that we plan to meet. The morning will be will likely include a health check, a wellness check for every student and faculty member. So again, our goal is to ensure that we have as good a handle on safety and well-being as we possibly can. So that's something that we can expect every day as we move throughout the year. Then there'll be meals as we normally have, breakfast, and then we'll also need some time to sort of prepare the campus and sort of clean up, whether it's in the dorms or around campus, around the academic buildings, in order to prepare for a full day. As Mr. Sherrill said, classes will meet 4 times per week. Because of physical distancing requirements, some classes will have to be divided so that we can operate safely within classrooms. For those classes where enrollment is smaller, we may be able to meet as whole sections the entire time. But our plan at this point is to divide classes so that there will be a blend of both in-person and online learning that are happening throughout the schedule. There will be certainly opportunities for students will be in class with teachers, but there will also be assigned work that they might do in collaboration with one another or independently, following along a lesson plan for a particular day. That's going to follow a routine and a schedule that will be consistent. So there won't be surprise as to when that happens and who is to be where when. But know that classes will happen 4 times a week, and some of those classes will be remote so that we can accommodate for the need to sort of thin out the population of students and faculty a little bit. We intend to have many of our sort of community gatherings, but with an altered design. So in the same way that we won't be able to necessarily have full classes of 14 or 15 students at a time, it's going to be a challenge for us to find ways to have all school assemblies or chapel with everyone together in the same space. So some of these meetings will happen in rotation. Some of them will happen virtually. They might happen in smaller sort of group meetings where we're not in the same physical space, but we're engaged in the same activity. Again, this is not sort of the ideal way that we want to operate the school, but given the necessity of maintaining physical separation and controlling the possibility for outbreak, we have to take these steps. So classes will go through the day. There'll be 6 classes on most days, on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And afterwards, we'll have time for sports and activities. As Mr. Sherrill said, we will have, we anticipate having interscholastic competition at the varsity level. We're planning for that, but we don't know if we'll actually be able to do that. Other students will be engaged in other activities or intramural sports. Some additional, in some cases, the same sports that we offer at the varsity level, but on an intramural or in-school basis. So we will have activities on a daily basis for students in the afternoon, even if we're not able to participate in a full BAL interscholastic schedule. And then sort of wrapping up the time before dinner, we have what's sort of the shorthand of ConClab, which is conference time, collaboration, and clubs. And we want to find ways to continue those activities that are important elements of our community. And so we've sort of outlined this time as a possible time when clubs might meet, or there will be conference time, or some student collaboration. We recognize that there's some overlap with sports, but there are some folks who will be free during that time to participate in those activities. So as you can see, we've tried to accommodate and to accommodate with as much regularity as we can, those activities that are familiar to folks and that we understand to be, as Mr. Sherrill said, not extracurricular, but part of our full curriculum. And so the schedule reflects that. Wednesdays are a little bit different, and that we'll continue our tradition of having a little bit later sleep on Wednesday mornings for students as the faculty meet. We'll have our traditional grade level meetings. Again, those may happen in divided groups, not necessarily in one large group. And then at the end of the day, rather than having chapel at the start, as we've had in the past, our plan is to have evening chapel. So from 7 o'clock until 7:45, we'll have our chapel service. It probably won't be that long. And as I said before, it will probably be divided in some way, or there might be some rotation of chapel attendance. But as we sort of stand as an Episcopal school and a school that is host to students and faculty of many faith traditions, we do maintain the importance of having that as an essential element of our routine and of our schedule and of our traditions. So we're going to do chapel, and there's a committee that's actually meeting to sort of restructure and organize chapel and how that might take form. But that will remain an important part of both our Wednesday and our Sundays, as we traditionally have held chapel services. So Thursdays and Fridays are similar to Mondays and Tuesdays. And then on Saturdays, there's an opportunity for 3 classes or classes and other activities, perhaps grade level meetings, perhaps some of the co-curricular programs that we've done from time to time. But we do feel that in order to meet as we intend to, again, returning students will notice that classes are an hour long as opposed to 70 minutes long as they have been in the past. We do need this additional time, and we want to make sure that we're taking advantage of the sort of the time that we have as a residential school. Saturday classes will mark a change, but that will be time that we want to use productively, not to overload, but in fact, what we want to do is to sort of open up the rest of the schedule a little bit more during the week. And so using Saturday mornings in order to do that, we found is the most effective way to accomplish multiple goals. So far as discretionary time is concerned, we know that students aren't going to be scheduled in class every single period. Part of the design of having 8 blocks as opposed to 7, which is what we've had in the past, is that will allow students to have discretionary time, and according to our normal plan, we'll use that time for student collaboration, for students to meet with teachers individually, for students to work independently on their assignments, and in every way to sort of make good use and effective use of that time according to their needs and according to their schedules. So the schedule also allows for a little bit more potential for discretionary time than perhaps our schedule did before. Again, that also helps us to ensure that we're not as sort of on top of each other and more prone to virus spread should we have to deal with that issue. And then on Sundays, our plan is to have chapel either with a rotation in the morning and the evening, or perhaps even just evening chapel. We haven't reached a firm decision on that, but it may be that all chapel services, both on Wednesdays and Sundays, are in the evening time. Again, that is an important part of our element and spiritual reflection and formation, and life of the Spirit in various religious traditions and faiths is something that we think important, and we want to make sure that we're reserving time to practice that for exposure to different faith traditions and for personal reflection and faith formation. So this is something that's important to us. So that's essentially what what we're planning on for our daily schedule. I'll flip quickly to our distance learning plan, which is similar to what we did this spring, with a couple of changes. We will have 3 or 4 classes a day. We will maintain time for school meetings or assemblies or advisory gatherings virtually. We will maintain time for conferences and that sort of conference time that I talked about before, so that students have time when they can meet with their teachers via Zoom and work on issues that may be of concern to them or seek enrichment, or however that time is best utilized. But this will be a Monday through Friday schedule, and for the most part on 3 days of the week, classes will end by noon, and 2 days of the week, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, there'll be an afternoon class as well. We recognize that Zoom isn't an ideal way to teach and to learn. We recognize that sitting in front of a computer screen for extended periods of time leads to some degree of fatigue, and so we don't intend to have classes running as long as they might were we in person. So we want to make sure that we're tending to not just the goals of the program, which so far as teaching and learning are concerned, but we're also concerned whether we're sort of holding school at a distance, or especially with the changes that we anticipate on campus, that we're tending to not just physical health and well-being, but where emotional health and well-being is our concern as well. And we recognize that we have a lot to do in order to ensure that. Outside of the class day, there are probably lots of questions about how weekends will work. Mr. Sherrill spoke a little bit about limiting the opportunity for students to go off campus for the usual activities. To the extent that we can, we plan to have a more dynamic sort of weekend experience filled with activities for students. And sometimes from time to time, there may be opportunity to go off campus as a group, some portion of the school, if we can ensure our safety and our separation from others and limit that risk of exposure. But we certainly know that we'll need to do a good bit. And Mr. Blair, Mr. Serban, and others who are principally responsible for the afternoon and evening programs on the weekends plan to be in touch and have been in touch with some students already about how we can sort of fill out a schedule of fun, of good activities that sort of keep us not just occupied, but allow us to enjoy one another's company while we're on campus together. So there's a lot there. There's a lot for us to go through. There's a lot for us to consider. There's a lot for us to adjust to. But this is a time when we recognize that we have to make these adjustments where it may be necessary to pivot from one mode of operation to the next. But as we've sort of worked through different task forces and groups to come up with plans for the school calendar, for school operations, as I said at the start, health and wellness is the most important thing, meeting the mission of the school and ensuring the continuity of the program sort of rounds out our three sort of driving principles. So I'll stop there and turn things over to Mr. Sherrill.
Thank you, Mr. Seeley. We should turn to questions that our parents have. And I know that Mr. Blair is on the line. I see a number of questions that are health related and also about weekends as well. Chet, would you like to comment?
Sure. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Some questions with emotional and physical health. Everything that we're doing, our schedule is geared to our students' emotional and physical health. So during our new student orientation, our senior orientation leadership programs, and community week, we will have some SEL components. Remember, each student has an advisor. We have a counselor on campus, and we will do a nurse, and we will do daily checks on people's health, both physical and emotional. Parents, you still have access to your students, talking on the phone, email, text, etc. So as we did last year and the years previous, we will definitely check in on our students' mental and emotional well-being. I see some questions regarding visits and lack thereof. Yes, the 4 or 5 day students we have will be going home. We're trying to limit people on campus and people leaving campus to decrease the chances of anyone contracting the virus. And I know that's a shift that we all have to get used to, but we believe it's to everyone's benefit. The nurses online, and she can answer some questions about check-ins and testing. Visits. Right now, parents, as Reverend Cheryl said, if there's extreme cases, you would have to give us ample enough time to look at that so we can decide when and if parents can come on campus. But right now, parents cannot just come to visit. Again, we're trying to limit people on and off campus. Again, I'm a parent. I understand you want to see your kids, but we're trying to keep everybody safe. Trips, as Reverend Cheryl, I believe Mr. Seeley talked about, we will not be doing a lot of trips or SWATs. We will try to look in to do some trips when we can, ensure the safety of our community. Again, that's a priority. So bear with us. We're looking into different things. We're researching. We want to do what's best for everyone in our community, especially our kids. We want to keep them healthy. So bear with us as we're going to make some changes, as we're looking to run a solid program where our students can have fun, where they can learn and be engaged with one another. We have a big campus, the gym, the weight room, the pavilion, the tennis courts, the pools will be open. We'll try to do movies when we can on campus. And again, when we can, we will try to find trips in smaller numbers where we can take kids off campus. As a question regarding supplies and food, yes, you can send some supplies and via the mail if you live close by. You can drop things off. You just need to call. And if there's going to be questions or concerns, you have full access to us. We want to work with you to ensure that we're doing everything for you and your son. So it's an open communication line to make sure they're doing everything possible for you. Let me see if there's any more questions for me. Grooming. Some of you may remember that last year, what we did is we had a barber come to school to cut hair. We were looking to see what's the best venue for either taking kids to a barbershop or bringing someone in, and maybe easier bringing a barber into the school like we did at the end of last year. That worked really well. So we're looking to those possibilities in terms of grooming and barbers. I understand the relationship with getting our haircuts and the relationship with the barber. I'm trying to see if there's any other questions for me.
Chet, maybe talking about testing of
Testing
students and
is-
adults.
So we would do health checks every day in the morning. Testing, we are working to get, we might have testing available on campus. If not, we have 2 locations where we can send kids to testing. If they're showing symptoms, the nurses will be taking care of the kids and will, if need be, either testing on campus or taking them to get tested. We do have a cottage. There's 10 cottages. 1 cottage will be open for quarantining purposes. If a kid is either showing symptoms or has tested positive, they will go into that cottage, which is St. Martin. We do ask those families who are within driving distance, we will contact you to come pick up your son as soon as possible to get him home. When we do testing on campus or off campus, you'll be notified when your child is getting tested and the results as soon as we know. I'm trying to see if there's anything else. We're going to limit
concerns about sorry, Chet, there are the concerns that seem to keep coming up about what the faculty that will be coming on and off campus daily, as well as the day students, and how we keep the boarding students safe from those people outside the bubble.
Okay, and so we're going to be asking folks to document and keep track of where they're going and who they're around. Obviously, we cannot monitor everyone, but we're going to, with the 5-day students and with the faculty and staff that leave and come and go, practice wearing our masks, practicing washing our hands, practicing social distancing. So that's going to be important for us to abide by, not just on campus, but off campus. And again, I'll be going to and from, but I have to have a daily check myself in the morning before I enter the building. And we will document everyone's temperature. The nurses are going to do a phenomenal job of checking everybody, to make sure that we're healthy. Again, we're going to stay in contact with you as families and letting you know what's going on with your kids. If anyone's sick, we'll do a good job of communicating with you about that. Angie, anything else I'm missing on questions?
Just one thing, there's only one, but I'm wondering about the facial hair policy with the mandatory masks.
We will get to you about we'll update you about all policies soon. We're not prepared to answer that question right now. We're still looking into doing the right thing for our community. So just bear with us on that.
Will the students be able to use the sports facilities on the weekends?
Yes. Facilities are open during the weekends. We'll be open during the day. We want our students to be engaged. There's also a walking trail. We have bikes. I think also encourage your students to walk and exercise and using the space on our campus. That's going to definitely help our physical and emotional well-being. Whether they're a sports advocate or not, walking, jogging, some type of physical activity. We'll have space for yoga, we'll have space for praying, and being engaged. Okay. Trying to say simple. All right. Anything else that I missed? All right. Reverend Cheryl, Cecilia, anything from you? Or do we open up for questions?
I think we're ready. Angie, I guess if you're following questions in the chat room, you can keep feeding them along. There's one particular question, and I certainly believe that also new parents may be aware of this, that a former teacher of the school has been accused of abuse and molestation of a former student in 2010. We are working on that issue and certainly doing everything we can to participate in rendering the best possible outcome for that student in light of what he's brought to light. This is disheartening for any school and certainly discouraging for Church Farm School. We are doing everything we can to not only update our policies, but continually to instruct our faculty and staff on boundary issues, on what it means to be an adult in a community caring for children. As we've said at the beginning of this particular webinar, the safety and well-being of everyone is paramount. So we do regular training. We will certainly be updating that and augmenting that again before we start the school year. Everybody will be going, every employee of the school will be going through mandatory training on that. Although these matters are a little bit in the past, they are always current in terms of how people behave, our vigilance about that, and certainly in terms of instruction and in terms of what we expect out of our faculty. We try to sort of look for that certainly in our hiring. Everybody goes through mandatory background checks, and all of us we do that on a 5-year cycle. About 30 of us are doing that again this year. So these are very sort of important events. I certainly understand the concern. And boarding school is just that more of a distance between you and your child. We work hard to earn your trust. We certainly want to keep that trust. And when that is damaged, when that is violated, it takes a long time to sort of earn that back. I respect that. So as you demand much from us, so I, as the head of the school, demand much from our faculty, from myself, and making sure that all of our current policies, but also our current education, our current dialogue stays on top of that. We also encourage students to come forward with any concerns that they have, and we report that now by mandate in Pennsylvania to Childline, where the state itself then would be involved in helping investigate any concern of this kind. Not necessarily the perfect answer. We deeply regret that this is an incident on our campus. Again, although it's in the past, it was my first year, at least this particular incident was my first year as head of school. So of course I take that absolutely seriously. and out of great concern for the student, but for all students. We aim to be better. I wanted to answer that question. You will hear more communication from the school about what we're doing in the current situation, but also in terms of investigating a little bit more deeply. We don't know what we'll find, but we're intent on doing a little bit more research with an independent investigator at the school over this period of time, not over the current period yet. In terms of other things about COVID, in terms of just opening, I believe that we've covered a fair amount of the questions really about the health and well-being of everybody on campus. Again, one thing about if a child is ill, not every illness is COVID. And so everybody will be in a wellness check, a wellness screen every morning. Any student not feeling well, any adult not feeling well would report that now to the infirmary, would also be checked out. An adult probably would be sent home. A student locally might be sent home, depending on what that illness is. If it's a stomach ache, we don't believe that that's COVID. We'll certainly take care of that on campus for a boarding student. But as Mr. Blair indicated, anybody sort of showing symptoms, that certainly has to be evaluated seriously. It'll be evaluated by testing centers, which are a couple are very close by the school. Even if we don't have testing, we have quick access to that. But we will be calling families within probably about 200, 250 miles of the school, about a 4 or 5 hour drive to come get their student while we await that. We do have a capacity to isolate a few students, most of those living at a distance, and able to do that. And we believe that that certainly follows other guidelines that we're putting together with health officials and in concert with other boarding programs. Angie, are there other questions that are coming in that I'm not seeing while answering some of these other questions?
In several different forms, we've had it asked, is it possible to do the work at Church Farm School remotely from home? Or if things change with Pennsylvania's status, could a student withdraw and continue at home?
In terms of learning and just choosing to be online, if there are important medical accommodations, we'd like to work with you and your physician on what those are. Again, I'm talking about boarding students here and being able to do that. Our goal is to bring the community back together, as you know, imperfect as it may be. We would hate to see anybody withdraw over some of these concerns. We would hope that the dialogue would certainly continue with us directly on that particular issue to talk through some of those concerns. But you are always welcome to withdraw your student as you are their parent, you are their guardian, and you make that call. Again, I think we're working hard to be who we are as a boarding program, as a community. And of course, we'd like everybody to be part of that. If things are mandated and sort of change at a certain point, and there, again, we keep talking about that. Our goal is to be open and to be flexible with you as we sort of go along. This is our best foot forward in terms of getting other planning accomplished, allowing teachers to plan for their curriculum. They need that time to do that, as well as families need time to prepare. We don't have a crystal ball just as what's going to happen in terms of the virus. We are seeing a national spike in a number of states, a majority of states. Pennsylvania may not be immune to that. But we'll just see what the government may require us to start online. And then I think, again, families have choices to make about how they want to do that. And we certainly understand that. Next question.
How is the construction coming in? Will it impact how we start and how we function at the beginning of the year?
Thank you for that question. We're excited about the construction. The Art Center is complete. The new addition, all the openings have been made. Our goal is to have the construction finished by August 25th at the latest, when our first students start arriving to campus. There may be a few spaces where some specific work, and by that I mean some woodwork needs to be done by carpentry, some carpenters. So that may not be quite finished, but we expect occupancy and ability to use the building. Some of those spaces may not be fully finished, but we also believe that that work could be done in the evening after class hours. So if there's anything that would be left undone, could be accomplished fairly quickly at the beginning of September. So we're on track to move things along quickly and well, so that all of the new spaces will be open. I know that our communication director, Ms. Claypool, has been through with a camera so that she can post some pictures of that progress so that all can see what's happening now. But we're very hopeful to open as we wish to, with all the new spaces, which are, again, are to create greater points of contact. That sounds counter to the coronavirus, but for students to have an ease of travel through the building and to meet with their teachers. Next question.
There is some continuing concerns about the isolation from students' families, and wanting to be reassured that we are taking care of the students' social needs, mental health needs. Can you say more to reassure folks?
Yeah, so working really hard on our complete program, a residential program, trying to modify the right amount of structure as well as some free time. As Mr. Valera indicated in answering a question about, we have a 150-acre campus, how best to utilize that, using the gym and the pavilion, being creative with some maroon and gray exercises and some competitions, as well as bringing in some outside speakers or programs, not in big numbers, but maybe an individual on a stage or at a distance in the pavilion. Could be things like that to keep students entertained. Our school counselor is working to really make sure that the social, emotional well-being of all our students is first and foremost in the minds of advisors. Most of our advisors are not professional psychologists, but they're adults and professional teachers. So in terms of supporting students with a listening ear, and with anything that may seem troubling, being in direct contact back with home, involving the counselor with that as a way of just talking through what may be a little bit of homesickness, a little bit of concern about the safety and well-being of the home environment as the virus sort of moves around. So we'll be talking a little bit more about emotional stress, a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of sort of health and wellness, but also about sort of strengthening the spiritual, emotional capacity of children through our residential life program. That's pretty much how we will be addressing that. And at any time, if a parent feels that their student is wavering, not sure about what's going on or about themselves, immediately calling the advisor is our first line of approach to be in good communication with you and to try to settle that and to just to work through that. Again, that open communication in today's world is what we need to have. Next question.
Do we think that the longer class days and Saturday classes and mandatory chapel on Sundays is going to be an overload to the students?
I'm going to let Mr. Seeley pick up on this, but actually we feel the opposite, that by spreading things out through the week this way is actually a little bit more relaxing, a little bit more even, not trying to compress all of this into Monday through Friday with chapel on Sunday as well. But I'll let Mr. Seeley speak to this a little bit. We had a good conversation with our faculty about it as well.
Sure, thanks, Mr. Sherrill. So it's a good question, and certainly our goal is not to overload students or faculty. As we move into the year, we recognize that with these changes, there will be, there is a little bit more compressed schedule. You'll notice that the year is a little bit shorter than it typically is. Especially because of our response to COVID and trying to avoid being on campus for a good part of cold and flu season, we'll have a longer break in the winter. So we'll have, in fact, fewer weeks that will be in session on campus, even aside from even if we were to include those 3 weeks that are planned for distance learning relative to where we've been before. But having Saturday classes does, in fact, open up the rest of the week a little bit, which allows us to make time and space for more of the program that we sometimes struggle to find time to create. As I said before, classes are going to meet in a different format. Rather than 3 times per week, they're meeting 4 times per week. So we do it because we won't be able to meet in full in-person groups as we traditionally are able to. So we need to make time for that to happen without making each school day longer than it otherwise would be. As a residential school, we do have the benefit of not just a 5-day program, but we have the benefit of a 7-day program. And so we're trying to sort of leverage that to the best of our ability, again, with the principle of keeping the program as continuous and cohesive as we can, and in order to make the program effective. Again, we're not trying to overload. The Sunday chapel service is not a change other than the time in which it takes place. We've had required, I know there was a question about the addition of Sunday chapel. That is just a continuation of what we've done in the past. We've always met for chapel on Wednesdays and Sundays. And so that will be continued. The difference next year is that we're anticipating doing that as an evening service to sort of conclude our day and sort of move into the week or continue through the middle of the week rather than having that in the morning. We also recognize that moving chapel on Sunday to the evening allows for a little bit more flexibility for perhaps later sleep, or for students to set a little bit more of their own schedule as they start Sunday and prepare for the week ahead. So in every way, we want to make time and space for the full scope of our program, including grade level time, including clubs and activities, including advisory time, not just classes. And so utilizing that 6th day of the week, or at least the morning of Saturday, allows us to do that we think more effectively and at a better pace than we would if we were trying to do all of those things in a Monday through Friday schedule.
I think we probably have about time for 1 or 2 more questions. I am cognizant of the hour. I know these are very important topics that are on your mind. So I do want to assure every parent, every student who's online tonight that please send your questions by email. We will continue to work to answer those directly with you and engage in that continuing conversation. I think we've tried to cover a lot of things that are about health and wellness, about schedule. I see some other questions about some other standards, whether they're grooming or about behavior. The Student Parent Handbook will be available online. I think past editions are available online, but we tried to update that over the summer and try to have that work done by the end of July. Might take us a little bit longer this particular go around just because of some of the COVID necessities that we need to add to that. but we continue to evaluate those standards and update them for policies and procedures. That would be on the, Krista Peterson is online. Do I have that right, Krista, in terms of the timing of the updating of the handbook?
I have not heard a specific plan, but clearly that needs to be a priority.
All right, thank you. So that's more or less the timing that we have observed, trying to do that, and we'll be working on that as we go along. But if you have a direct, specific question, again, we can either point you to that answer or be happy to engage in dialogue.
To what email address should those questions be addressed?
To anyone, you can find our personal email addresses. I think certainly Mr. Sealer, Mr. Blair, or myself. Depending on the nature of that question, more academically oriented, schedule oriented would be to Mr. Seeley, more health, social, emotional wellness, student behavior issues to Mr. Blair. Again, I'm happy to help answer as well.
And you can also use the contact us on the website for any question, which Ms. Claypool will funnel in the right direction.
Great, thank you. Angie, do you see any other particular question or theme that we have not addressed tonight?
There are plenty, but I think we've handled the biggies.
Okay. I want to thank everybody for your time tonight. I want to close by reiterating that we recognize that children are our most precious resource. Our being a school, and particularly a boarding school, is to do everything we can to help develop that young man. Children are subjects, they are not objects. They are very much their own selves, and everything about Church Farm School is to prepare them for life. We do hope that they are planning to go to college as an instrument to make them even more thoughtful contributors to their world that they're going to inhabit and help shape. But doing that together is a genuine matter for all of us, and certainly a serious one, but an enjoyable one. We enjoy what we do. All of us are committed to the Church Farm School program and what it can do. And of course, those core values of respect, integrity, responsibility, and brotherhood underscore all we hope to be and do. So we share in that with you. It's a continuing dialogue. It's part of our human nature to try to be involved in the moment, to evolve in the moment, to be better than we've been, to leave our world a little bit better than when we found it. We have serious challenges today in this pandemic. Those are not unique to Church Farm School or to your parenting and to your own family situation. But we believe in working together. We will find positive ways to certainly keep a welcoming and vital program on campus as we start up this coming school year. There are 2 months between now, or a little less than 2 months now between now and then, where again, our neighbors, our fellow citizens across the country have something to say about that by their own actions. We pray that everybody does their best to stay safe, to observe good, healthy guidelines, and to help one another pass through this period of time that is still continuing. Again, as I said, we hope to be on campus together. We're striving in that direction. We hope it's not online learning and staying at home, but that will tell. So here we go. We'll stay going together. I look forward to greater interaction with you by email, along with Mr. Seeley and Mr. Blair and all of our colleagues here at the school. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, and we look forward to a continuing dialogue and seeing each and every one of you in late August or early September. Have a great evening, and God's blessings to you all for health and safety.